These protests and diplomatic actions led to the emergence of two independent world powers, India and Pakistan, which still exist today, are part of modern diplomacy, and have engaged in ongoing debate in diplomacy in recent times. In the early 1800s, towards the end of the Mughal Empire, British ships came to India, and shortly afterward, Britain took control of the land via the East India Trading Company, later sending an army to occupy India. In 1857, Hindu and Muslim leaders led a revolt against the British forces, but it was defeated by the British Army. However, that did not necessarily mean that India was subdued. One of the ways Indians fought back came in the form of the Indian National Congress, or the INC. They originally were an organization to stop anti-Indian racism, but when Mohandas Gandhi, later known as the Mahatma, joined, it became a fighting force for India's independence. One of the reasons that Indians were unhappy with the British was that the British were enforcing unpopular taxes on items such as salt and clothing. Also, they made a law known as the Rowlatt Bills, which made speech against British rule illegal. Due to these unpopular taxes and laws, the INC both violently and non-violently protested British rule. This led to the conferences that earned India its independence. Several people were involved in the fight for independence. These include the Mahatma, Mohandas Gandhi, an Indian lawyer of the Hindu Vaisya, or merchant class. According to his belief in a spiritual truth force called Satyagraha, he made many strictly non-violent campaigns for independence. These include his famous Salt March, in which he and thousands of followers marched to the Arabian Sea and gathered salt from the sea to protest the British salt tax, which many Indians thought was unfair, as it made living very expensive in a place where salt is much needed in the heat. After the about 420-mile march, Gandhi and about 100 of his followers were arrested. Some other important figures include Jawaharlal Nehru, another independence leader who became India's first prime minister, as well as Lord Wavell and later Lord Mountbatten, who were throughout the debate the viceroys of India. The protests made by independence leaders eventually led to diplomatic discussions with Britain. The INC and Gandhi wanted their country free of British rule, which they felt was enforcing unjust taxes and limiting free speech with the Rowlatt Act. Gandhi, Nehru, and Mountbatten were debating India's independence and how it would work. Gandhi and the INC wanted India to be its own independent nation, and Britain wanted India to remain its peaceful, obedient territory, although later they decided to give India its independence. Also, the INC wanted Britain to, if not grant independence, at least treat Indians fairly. The protests were mainly centered on Gandhi's Salt March, as well as the Amritsar and Punjab riots. The later diplomatic conferences mostly centered around the Round Table Conference in England and the passing of the Independence Bill. The bill gave India independence, and after a brief interim government of INC and Muslim League members ruling, India and Pakistan were granted a system of government led by a governor-general. During the debate, as well as the diplomatic acts, World Wars I and II were going on, which may have meant that Britain needed all the money it could get from India, although it also meant that they had more space to defend, so they may have wanted to give India independence so they wouldn't have to worry about them. After the passing of the Independence Bill on July 4, 1947, which granted India its independence, India was divided into Hindu India and Muslim Pakistan to ease the strong prejudices between the two groups. The Hindus in Pakistan and Muslims in India migrated to their own separate countries. Gandhi, distraught at this turn of events, began holding prayer meetings for reunification. The people of India and Pakistan were successfully made into members of an independent country. Also, people in the two countries that were prejudiced against Hindus or Muslims now had their own state religion and did not have to accept these views. On the other hand, the British now had no control over India or Pakistan, reducing the distance the British Empire spread. However, the British did give up India of their own free will. These changes were very significant, as they meant that India and Pakistan, after a long time as a British colony, became their own sovereign nations, and Britain was without one of its main territories. After the bill was passed, the leaders from Britain, as well as any British citizens still in India, had to return home. Also, at one of his prayer meetings for reunification, Gandhi was shot 3 times at close range by the Hindu fanatic Nathura Vinayak Godse. He told the police after his arrest, "I am not at all sorry." Gandhi died 25 minutes later in his guest house. The newly established countries of India and Pakistan still exist today, and as they each have their own state religion, this may have caused Hindu-Muslim prejudices to escalate. The people of the two countries lived as well as one can expect, although there were some difficulties over the years. One of India's political parties, which still exists today, is called the Congress Party, formed from the original Indian National Congress. As the independence leaders intended, India was freed, but in the process, the riots in Amritsar and Punjab, based mostly on civil unrest and false rumors of independence leaders being arrested, caused a total of 395 people to die and many more to be wounded. Also, India was divided, which was not a direct goal of any of the independence leaders. This event affected the entire world by creating 2 new countries to engage in diplomacy with other nations, and the nations still exist today. Also, later on, an area once known as East Pakistan became the nation of Bangladesh, and India and Pakistan had nuclear buildup and nearly a war over a territory known as Kashmir. Kashmir, a primarily Muslim region with a Hindu leader, was fiercely debated by the two countries, but a nuclear crisis was averted by successful diplomacy.